Scott Pilgrim must take on 7 evil exes to date his dream girl, Ramona Flowers. Things go sideways, and his quest leads him to confront himself. Characters Scott Pilgrim, Michael Cera, is a 20-something-year-old living in Ontario, Canada. He plays bass in a band called Sex Bob-ombs. This story seems to take place in another universe because it's hard to believe that one person could have as many ex-girlfriends as Scott does. Additionally, he lives with his roommate Wallace Wells, who happens to be gay. Scott's life takes an even more surreal turn when he encounters Ramona Flowers, who materialized out of thin air in his mind's Galaxy Honkai Star Railway. This anime version of Scott's story closely follows the same beats as the movie that came out, but with a slight curveball, the red pill comes into play. This section contains spoilers, so feel free to skip ahead if you prefer. In the storyline, old red pill Scott intervenes to prevent younger Scott from fighting Ramona's exes because in the future, they end up getting married and being happy for a while until a divorce leads him to consider a future without Ramona. The story never explains whether they had a house or always lived with Wallace. While Scott was with his old self, he was missing in the past. He encountered an old Ramona Flowers who brought him back into his past. However, he found himself not facing off against her exes, as they were on good terms with each other. Instead, he confronted an older Scott who had adopted a radical mindset. Scott's motivation stemmed from his desire to challenge the world, driven by the fact that the woman he loved needed some space. Whether or not she was seeing someone else during their break remained undisclosed. The series didn't joke when they said Scott takes off. He was absent for a significant portion of his own show. This could potentially be a deal breaker if viewers were primarily invested in Scott's character. Ramona Flowers, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, is the rollerblading girl with multicolored hair who was cool before it became mainstream. She moved to Canada from New York to start afresh and leave her previous reckless lifestyle behind. In this Netflix special, Ramona somehow became less toxic. After Scott was believed to be dead following his fight with Matthew Patel, she began conducting investigations to find him. Along the way, she had to confront her exes, whom she considered suspects, ultimately bringing closure to their past and resolving any lingering issues. Ramona's explanation of her relationships was always just making out, even though she was willing to sleep with Scott on their first date. The most significant closure moment she had was with Roxie. The intense fight they had and the complicated history of their fling revealed Ramona's lack of empathy and the emotional pain Roxie must have endured when Ramona abruptly left. Despite Ramona's apology, her actions were still not cool. The older and younger versions of Ramona came together in an attempt to help her mature and stop running away from love. They also assisted in calming down the older, stronger red pill monk Scott. Will their future be resolved? Will it have a happy ending? Ramona seems to be toning down on dyeing her hair, which is hopefully a step in the right direction. Thoughts Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is a fresh take on the original story, turning it on its head. I wasn't a fan of Scott Pilgrim when the original movie came out, but it seems that the creator has taken his old work and made some changes. Now, Scott understands that dating a 17-year-old is not acceptable. Ramona is no longer playing hard to get. It's simply a matter of common decency that one would have hoped for from the start. The characters are still flawed, but they are making an effort to improve. What's surprising to me is the intense dislike from the anti-woke crowd that opposes the show's bait and switch narrative. These individuals must be the biggest hype men for this. Part of me believes that Netflix paid them to spread the word. It's like watching Shrek and getting upset that the ogre, instead of the prince, ended up with the girl. The source material has always been cringeworthy, proving that they have been part of this cringe train all along. In 2023, with the abundance of thought-provoking content available, it's hard to believe that any sensible person would fall for this. So they made Scott's journey a little easier, even though we know he fought exes in an alternate timeline. Then, he has to confront an older, angrier version of himself, adding an intriguing blue pill versus red pill aspect, the desires of old, cranky men who want younger men to be alone and without wives. However, it should be noted that this series is strictly for fans of this property and those who enjoy anime. Characters like Wallace Wells, Todd Ingram, Gideon Goose Graves, Matthew Patel, Roxie Richter, Lucas Lee, and the rest are given ample time to develop their characters, rather than just being one-off fights for Scott. Watching this reminded me of several anime like Panty and Stocking, with hints of Tenchi Muyo, the movie when he went missing and was kidnapped by his grandfather's ex-girlfriend. The fight scenes in this show are well executed considering the weird circumstances. Fighting for the girl does not guarantee that you will win her over. The cameo featuring Edgar Wrong instead of Edgar Wright, who directed the original movie, added a corny but interesting touch for the sake of the characters. This is a series that can be easily marathoned in less than a day and won't make you hate life. The original cast from the movie returns to portray their roles, and for fans of the Scott Pilgrim lore, it's like an anime fan service beach episode with the main character showing up later. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is a 4 out of 10.